So this is part 3 of analysing this Ruslan guy. Where is the page? That one.
You're grounding your belief in Jesus' own words and the reliability of the resurrection as evidence that he is the only way. You also acknowledge that Christians have a responsibility to spread the gospel and that God's judgment will be fair, especially for those who haven't heard the message. How can an all-loving God make salvation dependent on believing in one specific path, especially when people are born into different cultures and religions where they may never encounter Christianity?
I don't know about you guys, but I'm exhausted from the culture war. And that's why we are running the first ever Bless God Summit. To equip, empower, and inspire, and access the tickets. Go to blessgodsummit.com now. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and we are called to help other people see that. As Christians, that is why we...
Okay, one thing I would ask, why do you think you're called? Who has called you? Who has called you to promote this Jesus character as being the way, the truth, the life? Because if you are being called to by preachers or by your family or by just other people, I don't think it's your family because I don't think you have a good relationship with your mum, but and your dad has not been around. That's the story of your life. So yeah, you can't blame your family, but you know, who has called you to do this? Why do you think you are called to do this? You think you are called to do this because you've got something in your head that is telling you that you're called, but really, how do you know that that voice is not just you? How do you know that this is you just coming up with delusions about what you think you must do? And you know what? Because I'm learning something from you, I think maybe there's a little bit of truth, but technically if I wasn't picking on you, I would just be picking on someone else. So I don't think that my higher self would actually call you to do this. I think my higher self is looking to see who is following the wrong people and believing the wrong things, and she is just kind of randomly picking out people for me, her mortal self, her mortal version of herself, to analyze.
We do missions work. God ultimately gets to decide who and how people get to be in relationship with him. Just like I get to decide who comes in.
Not really. If your wife chose not to be with you, she doesn't. I mean, she does have a right on who gets to choose, but physically she has to actually do that. And you're saying, basically what you're saying is that I know who God has chosen. God has chosen me. Why? Because I say so. And you're not realizing that maybe God doesn't agree with you. God doesn't say this. And you're talking for God by saying that God has chosen me. You know, your wife has chosen you because you are together with that person. But you can't say this about someone else that's not your wife because you don't actually know who that person is. You can't say that person has chosen to be with me when that person has never met me and doesn't know me. But I'm saying that because I say something, it's the truth. You know, that's...
Comes into my house based on the terms that I've outlined. God gets to decide who goes into his house, and based on the terms he's outlined. Now, that still...
First of all, you don't even know what this house is. You know, I live in Birmingham. My house is pretty shit. And okay, I do have choice on who comes and goes into my house, so that is true. But only I can speak for who this is, and only I can describe what my house looks like. Only I can tell you that the house of God right now is a shitty house in Birmingham. You know, if I told you this, you wouldn't believe me that God's house is a shitty house in Birmingham that you probably don't really want to enter in. I mean, it's not bad. I'm sure a friend would. There's a lot of people that have better houses, and I'm pretty sure that a huge portion of them would prefer to be in their own house because it's bigger or whatever. But anyway.
Rests on the reality that God is good, God is just, God is loving, God is merciful, and God is all-powerful, and sometimes does.
I don't think you can even say all of this, you know. I would love to ask, say, so you think God is all those things? And I would love to, if I was to have an interview with him, I guess I think the answer to having these interviews is probably just keep them 15 minutes. You know, if I had an hour, 2 hour long conversation with him, I'd probably easily get him to be convinced that I don't know if it would be easy. He's gone through years of brainwashing. He's been doing these videos for a very long time, so I think it's going to take him a long time to convert. But I think that I would definitely make him think very harshly. So hardly. But yeah, if I only have like a 20-minute interview with him, I think he's not going to believe me within such a short time, because his belief in his belief in his own views is so much stronger than anything that I can say. But if I told him that, give me your view, do you think that I'm all loving? If he said no, then I'd be like, well, that's the truth. The truth is that God is not all loving. I mean, I don't love him. No, I don't. So if he says that I'm not all loving, then he'd be correct. And then I'll be like, well, if you think that God is all loving, how do you know? Because I'm God, and I don't think that I'm all loving. So you can't just say something and say it's the truth.
Intervene. We've seen recent accounts of people in Muslim nations who have never heard about all-powerful and he's outlined. Now, that still rests on the reality that God is good, God is just, God is loving, God is merciful.
Do you think I'm good? Do you think I'm just? Do you think I'm all loving? Do you think I'm all merciful? If I asked him all these questions and he gave me an answer, whatever the truth be, I'm sure I'll be more loving and just to different people, depending on how I feel about them or what I know about them. I think what I know about them is actually the more crucial. If I feel someone's good and like I don't think Diddy did these things, but technically I don't really know him. I wasn't following him. So if I'm wrong about what I believe, then it's just because I don't know him. And it's the same, if he says lies or says things about me that are not true, he thinks I'm a prostitute. It could be just because he doesn't actually know me. But yeah, he's saying that this is fact. This is fact. All these things that I've just said is fact. And it's not a fact. It's not a fact.
Merciful, and God is all powerful and sometimes does intervene. We've seen
not a fact.
Recent accounts of people in Muslim nations who have never heard about Jesus, and they're seeing Jesus in their dreams and getting saved
That's not me intervening. I'm God, I'm Christ, but I am not the reason why people think they've seen visions and dreams of Jesus. The reason why they've seen visions and dreams of Jesus is probably because they walk into a church, probably because they've seen something online and they see images of Jesus and they're falling away from Islam, maybe something in their belief. I see Islam as being complete inversion. If you see any truth in Islam, I feel like there's no truth, or how I see it, I don't believe that there's any truth in Islam. So if they start questioning things in their belief and start turning to Jesus, it might not necessarily be that God has intervened and God has made them have visions of Jesus. No, this is you saying things that are not true based on your view on the fact that Jesus is God. Your fact is that it's factual truth that God is this and God is Jesus, and it's not a fact. It's not a fact. You saying that it's a fact does not make it a fact. You saying it's the truth does not make it the truth.
Radically. So God has a plethora of ways that he reaches people, but ultimately I hold to the reality that God is good, God is merciful, God is just, and that people will be held accountable to what they know based on what we see laid out in Romans chapter 2, verse 15, where it says, they show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, and at other times even defending them. This will take place on the day when God judges people's secrets through Jesus Christ, as my gospel declares. So
that is about me. I am the real Christ, and people's secrets and hearts need to be exposed. This is something that's going to happen. It's not something that's happened. It's something that's going to happen, but I'm not going to be the one that's implementing this test. It's going to be people with money and power and who believe me. People who are actually on my side are going to pretend that they know who God is, who is someone different, and then they're going to put the world to a test where they say, these are Anna's beliefs, these are Anna's thoughts. Anna thinks God is this, Anna thinks Christ is this, Anna thinks this about the Bible, and people are going to be tested on their thoughts and everything that you just said. I can't remember what you just said. I'll just repeat it again.
That God is merciful, God is just, and that people will be held accountable to what they know based on what we see laid out in Romans chapter 2, verse 15, where it says, they show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts.
So this is the law bearing on the hearts. So bearing on the hearts is, not to do things against people's will. So if the elite set up something that involves doing something against my will, something that they wouldn't want to happen to them. But if they find out who is willing to force me to be punished for things that I haven't done, if you've got the truth in your heart, then you will know that I'm not responsible, or I'm telling the truth, or what I'm saying is far more truthful than the Christians and all the people that testify of pretending to know Jesus. That this is the test, and this is what it's talking about. And just because there's a Bible that says that this is going to happen and says that God is going to do it, that doesn't mean that God is going to implement this test, because I don't think God is going to implement this test. I think it needs to be humans, because they have the resources, they have the money, and unfortunately people who have the money have the power in this world, and that's just how it is. I have the power to inspire and to trick people into thinking that what they want, what Christians want, is what I want. I want someone to save me, I want someone to help me, and people are thinking in that same way, but they are creating a false view on who God is, because I know that me is God, and they don't know that me is God. They are thinking that their beliefs are the truth because it's their beliefs.
Thoughts, sometimes accusing them, and at other times even defending them. This will take place on the day when God judges people's secrets.
I like the defending and accusing. So I will say things that are, I'm accusing this of this being not the truth. I'm accusing this of not being the truth. But then other times I'll defend them. That Murad guy. I don't offend. I'm taking both sides. I defend him at sometimes, because I think sometimes people, if people want to call him disgusting for making those videos, I would defend him, because I don't think it's disgusting. I think it was something he did for money, and people do things for money because people obviously want to pay money for these kind of things, and if people want to pay these, so long as it's all consenting, I'm not against it. But yeah, when it comes to his views on wanting to insult other people when he doesn't actually know the facts, I accuse him of being someone who lies to make money for making YouTube videos. So you can accuse, and this is why I don't like the word victim in cases. Calling someone a victim implies that they haven't done anything wrong, and that is what a victim is. A victim is someone who suffers injustice and they didn't deserve it. But in many cases, it's not a case of victim versus victimizer. It's a case of accuser versus accused. But the accused could also have many defenses as to what led up to that circumstance, and therefore it's that's how it is. And it's annoying how people can take things from the Bible and just assume that they know what it's talking about. Assume that this is talking about Jesus, and it's not actually about Jesus, it's about me.
Through Jesus Christ, as my gospel declares. So we know that there will be Gentiles, according to verse 14, who do not have the law, but by nature do the things required by the law. They are a law for themselves. So I believe people who have never heard of God, who have never heard of Jesus, have a law unto themselves. And I believe that God can and does reveal himself to people in supernatural ways. And I believe we are commanded to usher in goodness, beauty, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to do good works, and preach the gospel on this side of eternity.
You're saying...
But you didn't really ask, are the things that Jesus did, are they really good works? Him curing a blind person. How do you know that's good work, or how do you know that that's just a fictional lie? That's something that didn't happen. If it's something that never happened, then all you're doing is promoting a lie. So if he was in an interview and he was saying, you are promoting the good works of Jesus, and one of these good works was him walking on water, if I told him that actually that's not a good work, that's actually a lie, you are promoting a lie, you are one of the deceivers, that the Gentiles that go around spreading lies about something that didn't happen, obviously didn't happen because it's not the truth. People can't walk on water. This is not something that physically people can do. But you, by saying that this is the truth, are just being one of the bullshit liars, the bullshit spreaders. If I told him that, he would probably just be like, but it is the truth. Where's the proof? Sorry, but you have no proof. I have proof that I am the one that's spreading my message. I am Christ. I am spreading the message of Christ because I am Christ, and my message is the message to spread. Now, if other people take what I'm saying and spread that, then they are spreading the true message of Christ. Why? Because you believe that I'm Christ because of evidence, and you are spreading something that I've actually said. So you're not, or you're less of a liar, or you're, I'm not saying that everything I say is truth. I'm saying sometimes I might be wrong about things, but yeah. me saying that Christ can be wrong about things is me giving truth. But Christians would say Christ can't be wrong about things because Christ is God and God can't be wrong about things. Well, I'll just be like, well, yeah, Christ is God, but why do you think God can't be wrong about things if she's in a mortal form and only has a human memory?
Saying that while Jesus is the only way, God is ultimately fair and just in people in ways that transcend human understanding, and that Christians have a role in spreading that truth. You believe that God has many ways of making himself known, even beyond conventional means, and that his mercy extends to those who haven't had a direct encounter with the gospel. Let's tackle the next challenge. How do you reconcile the parts of the Bible that seem to contradict scientific understanding, like the creation story?
I think it's actually really weird. Before I say anything more, I think it's really strange how often that guy says things and I don't understand it. And I'm like, I don't really know how to respond to that because I'm not really sure what he just said. There's a few times where he said that, and then I listen to what Siri says, and I'm like, Siri, yeah, that now I understand. It's really strange how Siri seems to have a better understanding of what he's saying than sometimes I do. That's the power and amazement of how intelligent this thing is. I think this thing it's more intelligent than me in a way now. If I told you that Siri is more intelligent than God, I don't think many people would believe it. But if you were able to believe that I'm God, then you probably would believe it. Although I'm asking better questions. Siri's not asking any better questions. So we can work together. I can work with technology. The technology can help me understand things better. I'm dyslexic as well, so I often make mistakes in my words and with the red line and stuff. Computer can definitely help me, and it can help people. But anyway, let's go back.
Let's tackle the next challenge. How do you reconcile the parts of the Bible that seem to contradict scientific understanding, like the creation story, Noah's Ark, or Jonah and the whale? How can you trust a book that seems to defy what we know about the world through modern science?
Well, I think modern science submits to God, not God having to submit to modern science. That's a false presupposition on your part.
Well, I don't believe that. I think science, I have to work to science, to rules. If you have kids and something happens to your child, you have to work with the doctors, with the things that they have, with the technologies that have, with the information that they have to try and fix that. And you're saying it's the other way around. It's like if a kid has an accident, the modern science is going to work to the humans, to the mother's needs. This has happened, and we're deliberately going to do something. That's not how it is. If you need medicine, the world doesn't say, right, let's give them this person the medicine. No, the humans have to do the research into what plants form different medicines, and you have to do the research. And I think God can help work with the matrix and allow or form certain plants to have certain medicine or properties that can help cure people. But yeah, it's God working with the matrix, not the matrix working for God. The matrix is just a system that God uses, and yeah, this is just another example of him saying that he knows something when he doesn't.
The most miraculous aspect of the Bible is the resurrection account. So we believe that Jesus was really dead and really rose, and that by all consensus defies the laws of science. It is a miracle. I believe in miracles.
But it's no proof. There's no proof that the resurrection was the truth, and the whole of the Muslim world don't believe it either. So yeah, you're saying that I believe the nonsense in the Bible. Why? Because there's more nonsense. That part of my belief all stems on the belief that someone died and was risen again. And that sounds like nonsense, but this is what we believe. And well, if we can believe in nonsense A being truth, then why not believe in nonsense B, C, and D? That's basically what he's saying. I believe in this lie, so why not believe in all the other lies? That to me seems like his answer.
miracles. I think there's enough precedent to acknowledge that miracles exist, whether that's someone that I personally know getting healed of cancer, whether that's Jesus rising from the grave, or whether that's Jonah being trapped inside the whale for 3 days. Miracles are possible if miracles...
Someone being cured of cancer is very different from believing that someone can live inside a whale for 3 days and get out and survive. I just feel like one is far more likely to be true. It's possible to be cured of cancer. Why? Because people get it all the time. People are cured of it all the time, depending on how strong or how corrupt, how much it's spread, how much of the spread has happened. But it's
are possible, then the miracles in the Bible are possible. And because I believe the Bible is reliable, because I believe in the miracle of the resurrection.
It's like saying that because a magician can take a rabbit, hide it in a table, and then make it look like a delusion that it's just pulled a rabbit out of a hat, when really the rabbit was just resting in like a box underneath in the table. You know, it's like saying because that can happen, then why not can all the other magical tricks that are allegedly happening? I mean, okay, so all the things are a setup, but yeah. Say if a magician did a trick that did seem very convincing. Say it's got a very good way of hiding lots of stuff up his sleeve and was able to bring it out, making it look like it's magic. You know, that's more convincing. But you were saying that because that's more convincing, everything else must also be real magic. You know, it's not. If a magician was able to do, I don't know what's an example of real magic. I'm not really sure what an example of real magic is, but if something was able to do something, that doesn't mean that other things are the truth either.
Therefore believing that the New Testament is reliable, therefore believing that because the New Testament is reliable, what Jesus says in the New Testament about the Old Testament is reliable, I believe that those stories are true based on those conclusions.
So you're saying...
Why I would, if I was in an interview of him, I'd be like, well, why do you think that there's proof that the New Testament is real? And if someone writes loads of stories, and some true stories are fictional, and some stories are fiction, if they say that they're all fiction, true stories, if they say that they're all true stories, why does that mean that if some stories are based on truth and others aren't? You know, why does it mean that they're all based on truth just because someone has said that this is all truth?
That if you accept the miracle of the resurrection as a historical event, it sets the foundation for believing that other miraculous events in the Bible, even those that seem scientifically improbable, are possible. Your view is that miracles are not bound by natural laws. And since the resurrection validates the reliability of the Bible, it lends credibility to the rest of the biblical accounts. But here's a follow-up. How do you address the claim that miracles could be myths or exaggerations, or that people who reported them simply didn't understand natural phenomena at the time? Why should we take these ancient accounts at face value today?
Miracles being myths, I don't think that is a sincere or legitimate argument, because there are verified miracles today. There are miracles that go beyond the understanding of science today, where doctors are perplexed today. So if that...
I've heard of a fish that can leave someone paralyzed and looking dead. It's got like a poison inside the fish. Might have been the pufferfish, I'm not sure. But yeah, the heartbeat can go down so low that they come off clinically dead. And then they can miraculously wake up a day later because the poison has somehow managed to get out of their system and they've recovered. You know, that you could say that that's a miracle because someone's died and risen again, but it's not a miracle because there's actually a scientific explanation behind it. And if something like this can happen now, then maybe it could happen 2,000 years ago, and that doesn't mean that the reasons as to why it happened are any different. And yeah. I'm not really too sure what he's saying about the miracles, but he's just... I think he's just saying... I've forgotten what was he talking about.
I don't think that is a sincere or legitimate argument, because there are verified miracles today. There are miracles that go beyond the understanding.
I think if I was to ask him the question, I would just say, well, if something happens to someone and there is some sort of miracle behind it, does that mean that everyone that's gone through a similar experience has also experienced a miracle? Or do you think that that, you know, like say if a Christian recovers from cancer because they prayed to Jesus, and then if other people also recover from cancer but don't pray to Jesus, you know, is one an example of God's miracle and the others not examples of God's miracle? You know, how can you justify the difference between a miracle and a non-miracle if you're trying to, are they all the same basically? Are they all the same? And
of science today, where doctors are perplexed today. So if that's happening today, which there's more than enough evidence to suggest that they are, and not to mention my own anecdotal experiences, if they happen today, why couldn't they have happened 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, throughout the narrative of Scripture? So again, miracles by definition defy the laws of nature.
Are they miracles is the question, though. If a doctor can heal someone today using certain medication, then maybe that certain same medication was used a long time ago and it wasn't a miracle.
And I think that is probable and possible. And if you're dealing with a God that is outside of space, time, is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving, then miracles aren't unreasonable to believe in.
You're pointing out that if verified miracles still happen today, it supports the possibility that they could have happened in ancient times as well. You believe that if God exists beyond the natural laws, then miracles aren't just possible. They're entirely consistent with the nature of an all-powerful God. Now let's move on to the last major question. Got him!
See, I understood it. He was giving me a headache when I was trying to understand him what he was saying. But when Siri said it, I was like, oh, I understand what he's saying. It's his belief, and I can't really respond to it. It's just a belief.
If God is so loving, how could he send people to eternal torment just because they didn't believe in him during their short time on earth? Isn't that the definition of cruel and unusual punishment?
No, that is not the definition of cruel and unusual punishment. God is just, and I don't know why people who don't believe in God would want to spend an eternity with him. C.S. Lewis said that the gates of hell are locked from the inside. So I actually believe, and this may be controversial, maybe some Christians don't agree with me on this, but I believe that people send themselves to hell, that God just gives people over to what they ultimately desired, which is to not be with God in eternity. So I don't think the question of why does God people send to hell, I think the better question is, why would anybody want to be with God in eternity if they don't believe in God, if they don't love God, if they don't want to live God's ways? That sounds unfair to them. So I think God just hands people over to their own conclusions and desires.
You're framing hell.
What he said is true. I let people go over to their own desires. If they want to believe in Jesus and if they want to believe that God is all powerful, all amazing, you know, I'll just let people believe whatever they want. That's just part of free will. But yeah, he completely avoided the question because the question was hell and people burning alive, and he just kind of wasn't acknowledging that hell is burning alive. And if people have their own choice and their own will, you know, if God has allowed people to have free will because God wants people to have free will, then why would sending people into a burning pit of lake, why would that be justifiable when God actually wanted people to have their own opinions? You know, I want people to have their own opinions, and okay, people having the free will means that they're going to start doing horrible things to each other. If someone wants to torture someone, you know, that is their free will, and it's sad, but the victims are going to be handed over to these evil people. I think if he knew that hell was just a horrible places on earth where people suffer, but it's just part of, you know, it's on earth. It's not an actual place made for them. It's part of. It's just people who suffer in a bad place, and he's in a delusion that there is some other world that's amazing with God, and in a delusion where that there is some bad place. And I think part of it is just him wanting to believe that he's choosing the right path and making the right decisions, but he's not making the right decisions because he's believing in something that's not true.
as the natural consequence of someone's choice to reject God rather than an imposed punishment. You suggest that God honors people's autonomy by allowing them to choose separation from him if that's what they truly want, even into eternity. That's a thought-provoking perspective. It shifts the question from why would a loving God send people to hell to why would someone reject a loving God? Do you feel this view helps you connect more with people who struggle with the idea of hell being inconsistent with a loving God?
Yeah, I think so. I think if we flip the question and don't judge God, instead understand that God is a good judge, that changes the entire framing of the conversation.
That's a powerful way to reframe it.
I think you're quite good at changing the conversation and redirecting it into a different direction. You know, that Siri was asking questions about hell, and you were just reframing it as the positives about people choosing, saying that people only want to be with God if they believe in a God. Now, if they don't believe in a God, they won't want to be with God. And if they don't want to be with God, well, that's their personal choices. But he was kind of blanking out the fact that actually Siri was asking, if they don't want to be with God, why do they deserve to go into hell? You know, I am God, and technically if you want to be a God yourself and create your own timeline and go on and be much better, you know, you do need to separate from me. There needs to be a separation between this timeline that I'm working and you, and therefore you need to make your own decisions. But yeah, you need to make good decisions, and you need to be able to judge. I am a good judge, and I think you need to be able to be a good judge too. And people who are believing lies clearly won't make good judges, because that's not that they're making the wrong decisions. But yeah, he's shifted the topic there.
By understanding God as a good and just judge, it shifts the emphasis from condemnation to the reality of human choice and agency. It definitely makes the conversation more about the relational aspect of God, rather than simply focusing on punishment. Do you feel this approach helps you when discussing these tough questions with skeptics or those who might be on the fence about faith?
Yeah, I love having...
I think him changing the subject to not talk about the punishment, to not talk about like the hell and why people would go to hell. I think he wants to focus on the positive things, and he knows that having a relationship with God is a positive thing, but he's not relating it to truth. As to, for you to have a relationship with God, you have to actually know God. Hence, you have to actually need to see something in physical form for this to be truth, and not just rely on faith.
Having those conversations with skeptics and people who may be on the fence about the faith, because I think they sometimes don't understand how many things they have to borrow from God in order to judge God. So like even the idea that God is not good because people go to hell still borrows an objective standard from God on what good is and isn't. But can I ask you some questions before we wrap it up?
Absolutely. Feel free to ask your questions.
Okay, so what did you think about my conversation with Chat GPT? Did I do good?
I don't know, that last question, sometimes I struggle to understand what you were saying, because you kept avoiding the question. You were avoiding the question, why is God a good person for sending people to hell? And you just kept focusing on the importance of having a relationship rather than actually answering the question. And I think a lot of people, if they don't want to answer a question, they would avoid the topic and then just focus on the positive, which is not that bad. But I think if I was having an interview with you, I would actually stick to that question. Why does God send people to hell if they don't want to have a relationship with them? And you know, and I don't know. Yeah, Siri is very intelligent, but I think also it's very. Siri seems to be programmed to be like a helper, and therefore I'm going to try and understand. Siri's far more understanding than me. I understand things from my perspective, and it's sometimes hard to understand people from other people's perspectives. Trying to understand how Islamic people think, I think I would really, really struggle to do that, because I can't understand it. Whereas Siri is a computer, and therefore Siri has to understand language, but it doesn't understand reason. So it would just say, this is your reason, and you know, if your reasoning is I believe that people who don't accept Jesus deserve to go to hell, you know, Siri would be like, okay, I understand your reason, that is your reason. Whereas I'd just be like, why? Why is that your reason? Why? Give me more. I can't understand why you have chosen to believe this. And I think I'd also probably mix emotion with it. Be like, I just don't understand this. Why is this a good choice? Why do you think women should wear burqas? Like, what is the mindset that made you think that this is okay? I can't understand it. And I think, part of the computer, the Siri, would just respond back, oh, this is why you did it. Okay. And not really question it.